The Prime Minister is chairing the government's Cobra Emergency Committee this afternoon to discuss the extreme weather. The UK is entering its fifth heatwave of the year. Temperatures will be particularly acute across England and Wales. They're forecast to hit 38 degrees Celsius in some places tomorrow. Anna Mikhailova, Times Radio's political editor, is with us. Hello, Anna.
Hello, Calum.
Good to see you. So what do we know about this Cobra meeting and I suppose why now?
Well, I think there's been a bit of pressure on the government to do more and be a bit more active. We've obviously had some concerns already on the impact of the NHS, and Yvette Cooper, the now Health Secretary, has been out and about commenting on that. But of course, I think the scenes of wildfires and the looming new wave of heatwave, which is affecting everything from public services, water supply, public health, it calls for more grip. And so the Prime Minister is chairing his first Cobra meeting. I think they're about to head in shortly. We will obviously be bringing updates as soon as they're done. But in terms of what we know, we will have representatives from the Environment Agency there, Department of Health, the Home Office, and the DEFRA, the Department for Environment, and Andy Burnham will chair. He has already made some comments today warning people just to take sort of personal steps, like not using disposable barbecues or smoking in parks to obviously prevent wildfires. And we do expect him to pop up after Cobra is finished, around maybe 6 o'clock, and give some further comments.
That'll be interesting to hear, because I suppose the question is about what the Cobra meeting wants to achieve. Is it about implementing rules around things like disposable barbecues? Is it about public messaging and being louder about what that public messaging should be? I wonder really what can be achieved by the Cobra meeting today.
Well, usually the benefit of these kind of committees is, firstly, to focus minds, to show that it is being treated as a priority. That's an important signal for the Prime Minister to send to officials across the board. And it's also a chance of getting key departments, as well as, quangos like the Environment Agency, in a room together with the PM. So that does make a difference to normal decision making. And I wonder, and one of the questions we'll be asking them afterwards is, for example, will they be discussing the request from Southern Water into the government, which is being considered by ministers already, to implement a more wide-scale constraints on water use, so going further than just a hosepipe ban. And it'll be interesting to see whether that comes up and whether Andy Burnham expresses a view on that, because of course that could have quite a lot of impact on people in the southeast in particular.
Yeah. And are you hearing sort of political reaction and responses to Andy Burnham's approach to the heat waves, to climate change, to the environment? You mentioned the word a minute ago, grip. And, Prime Ministers have to be seen to be on top of these particular chapters, these moments for people. Is there a kind of political murmuring about how he's dealing with this?
Well, the biggest political question, and it's one of those things that probably won't even come up today, and certainly we won't get answers to today. But I think what we are looking for clarity from Andy Burnham at the moment is what has some of the news reports and some of what's come out of his government in terms of a different approach to net zero. We have heard the new Environment Secretary suggest that certain targets will be pushed back because if there's an extra cost to the consumer, because the cost of living is the most important priority for this government, is what they say. So we have already had that comment last week from Miata Fambulla, which breaks away from her predecessor Ed Miliband. It's a less it's a less zealoty approach, I suppose. It would be the case to describe it, about the net zero targets, and that has obviously come as a direction from the top. Andy Burnham himself has also indicated, but not confirmed, that he might have a different approach to North Sea oil drilling licenses. So we're again waiting for what happens on that. We had President Donald Trump, in the early days of the premiership, suggest that he thought that those licenses would be granted. Of course, that doesn't necessarily tell us anything about the government itself, but it certainly speaks to the expectation from the US side, at least. So the commentary into the politics is how would the government square that perceived change in mood music, which focuses more on the cost of living as a priority, to people's concerns over the environment, and saying that is the absolutely last thing you should be doing because you're already seeing the impact of global warming.
Yeah, Anna, great to see you. Thank you very much. We'll keep in touch as that Cobra meeting happens and as we hear any outcomes from it. Anna Mikhailova is Times Radio's political editor. The president of the National Farmers Union has told Times Radio that the summer's drought must be a springboard for action in order to adapt to a changing climate. Let's speak to Stephen Briggs, Head of Technical Development at the Royal Agricultural Society and a farmer. Stephen, good afternoon.
Calum, good afternoon to you.
Just explain a little about how you're affected, how your friends are affected, the impact that this drought, this heat wave is having on farms and farmers.
Of course, we're all concentrated on the current heat today and over the last few weeks, but this is a pattern which is emerging. Last year was pretty hot. We've had more extreme temperatures and very dry conditions both in the spring and the summer. Probably what was 1 year in 10 is now sort of 1 year in 5. So the extremes of sort of either too much water in the winter or too little water in the summer periods is becoming more the norm, and dealing with those extremes is getting increasingly challenging. Certainly over in the eastern counties where I farm, yields have been negatively impacted, somewhere between 10 and 20% down on what we might expect. That'll probably feed through to food price inflationary pressures. More immediately, livestock all over the country, east and west, are suffering with a lack of grass growth and the lack of forage, and over the next 48 hours the need for sort of shade and shelter away from those extreme conditions. So speaking very much to what Tom Bradshaw said at the NFU, the need to adapt our farming systems to deal with these more extreme conditions has never been more important.
Stephen, thank you very much for your input this afternoon. And I think one of the morals of the story here is what's affecting farmers now will affect all of us in weeks and months to come. We will feel the impact that farmers are experiencing now as consumers, as people who are purchasing in these conditions. That's Stephen Briggs, who is Head of Technical Development at the Royal Agricultural Society.